Hello, welcome to the Let's Talk Kids Health Facebook Live Show, episode 48. I'm Dr. Narissa Bauer, your host. I'm a behavioral pediatrician and CEO of Let's Talk Kids Health. As you know, the concept of this show is to share information about behavioral health, parenting, and family wellness. Each week, I plan to bring you topics and guests to help me advance this mission so that we can all talk together. Now, let us know that you're here by commenting, asking questions, and liking at any time. This episode was pre recorded. However, we will be monitoring the chat and get back to you if there are questions. The replay will be immediately available after the broadcast. Please share this episode with anyone you think who could benefit. Now, if you don't want to miss future episodes or maybe check out my past ones, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Narissa Bauer MD, and follow my blog Facebook page, Let's Talk Kids Health. All right, now on to this week's guest. Dr. Michelle Thorne is a clinical psychologist who loves working with kids and helping them learn ways to manage big emotions and stressful situations. She also enjoys working with kids and families who have medical conditions that impact their daily lives. She's been in private practice since 2013 in Indianapolis. She went to University of Kansas for undergraduate work. She also completed her graduate education at Purdue University in clinical psychology and did her internship at Indiana University School of Medicine, where she worked at both Riley Children's Hospital and LaRue Carter Memorial Hospital. I am so excited to welcome friend and also clinical psychologist, Dr. Michelle Thorne. Thank you so much for being here today.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm
Yeah,
so excited to be here.
yes, this was a long time coming. I know
Yes,
it
it
was,
has.
and I'm so glad that we're finally here today. When I first dreamed up this show, I selfishly wanted to bring on some of my great friends who are doing awesome work, and your name was at the top of the list. So,
Oh, thank you.
so yes, I'm so glad to finally have you on. And so, I just wanted to ask you before we get started, why did you decide to go into psychology and how did you get into that?
So, I think probably the best explanation is what I used to get in trouble for in school was talking too much in class. And so I made a career out of talking to people and getting to know people. And it's always been something that I've loved to do is to just get to know people and find out their stories and what's been good for them and what's been a challenge. And so psychology was just kind of a natural fit.
Oh, I love that. Turning that into something that you is a lifelong passion. I love that. Today we're going to talk about anxiety in kids. And with the pandemic, we're seeing sky high prevalence rates of this. Kids who are previously anxious are more anxious. Kids who weren't previously anxious are now anxious. And everybody's anxious, right? I mean,
Mhm,
we just don't
mhm.
know what to expect day to day. So I think this is going to be a great episode. And, I think in terms of just getting us started, could you share with us, what are some signs and symptoms of anxiety in kids so that parents will know what to look for?
Sure. And this is something that varies with age. So, younger kids, I think sometimes it's a little easier to see. A lot of tears may happen, a lot of just voicing refusal. I don't want to, I can't do that, those sorts of things. Separation anxiety in really little kids will look like clinging to parents and I don't want to go do this thing and sort of that refusing to try something new. As kids get older, it can be a little bit more irritability and being overwhelmed. And so it may look a little bit more like they're being defiant or just refusing to do something, when in all actuality, it's anxiety. And they're very afraid of whatever's coming, but they just don't have the words to say what's going
Hmm.
on.
Yeah, I mean I think that's a huge thing. I see a lot of kids in my own practice that are labeled as very oppositional or maybe even oppositional defiance. And I
Mhm.
think what you just said there is really important to make sure that we're looking at everything in terms of what is really driving that behavior, and that can be really hard, especially if you're on the receiving end of that.
Mhm.
So thank you for pointing that out. So I guess, now that if you've identified anxiety, how do you actually recommend talking to kids about it? I mean, do you just say you have anxiety, or how do you introduce that concept?
So I'm a big science person, so I want to hear like the science background of where this stuff comes from, because so many kids and families will come in and feel like there's something wrong with me, or there's something that nobody else is dealing with this. And in all actuality, as you pointed out, We are all dealing with it. In fact, anxiety is required. We need it. It's evolutionarily programmed in. We have to have anxiety because, as I tell my kids that I see, if I go walk across the street and I don't have anxiety, I don't look because I don't have any awareness. So I have to have some pre programmed warning sign. What happens for anxiety is that the warning signs get turned way up, or our brains give us alarms that are false. But we don't know that in the moment because our bodies react and say, oh my gosh, this is something I need to be really worried about, when in all actuality, it's not. So, part of this is learning how to say anxiety is completely normal. We all need it, we have to have it. What we need to learn how to do is control the volume of it and learn how to tell the difference between something that's really anxiety inducing and something that is, oh, okay, that's not really that big of a deal.
Hmm. So do you have different strategies to introduce this to kids based on their age or just, when they're new to seeing you?
Yes, I do. Actually, it's kind of the new to seeing me. I had thought about doing it a little differently, but it seems like everybody resonates with this, whether they're little kids all the way up to adults. So I talk about the different parts of the brain in terms of our level of awareness. So we have sort of like three basic levels, and I call them the lizard, the monkey, and Einstein. So I usually start off with that discussion, and that usually helps people kind of, oh, all right, I can see that. So your lizard brain is just the most basic level of life support. Eat, sleep, breathe, go to the bathroom, repeat. That's all the lizard cares about. He's just going to keep you alive. All those things are met. He's out sunning himself on a rock. You're not going to see him. He's not going to bother you. The next level up is your monkey brain or your mammal brain. And it's called this because all mammals have this level of brain function. This is all of our emotions. This is our fight or flight response. This is our need for social connection. This is also where anxiety tends to come from. So we talk a lot about the monkey brain when I'm first meeting with people, and then kind of throughout. Then the following, or the final level, is your Einstein brain, and that is your human brain. So logic, reason, planning, all those sorts of things, decision making, organization, all of that comes in that final level. And typically, what human brains like to do is make things automatic. So if it's something I do a lot, I'm not going to think about it. I'm going to let one of those lower levels handle it, and that's just going to be that. What happens in the case of anxiety is that the monkey perceives a threat and says, oh my gosh, something is wrong. Lets Einstein know. Einstein jumps into problem solving mode and says, oh, what do we need to do here? What's going on? What's happening? And oftentimes with anxiety, as in the case of, oh, let's cross the street and there's a car coming, the message is, hey, stop, get out of the way. Einstein will move us back or take over and make sure that we don't put ourselves in that situation. What happens with anxiety in kids and in adults is that a situation that is not life threatening is delivered as a life threatening message. This math test is life threatening. Mm-hmm. You are now experiencing so much anxiety about having to take this test that you are having your heart race, you are breathing fast, all the things that would try to trigger a fight or flight response.
I really love those different levels, and for kids, I'm sure that that is very concrete and they can understand that. And
Mm-hmm.
that's such a nice way to put that. I mean, I guess, how do you also talk then to them about, what their triggers are,
Mm-hmm.
because you just mentioned a math test, but for some it could be a fear of a dog
Sure.
or other
Yep.
things. Like, how do you help them figure that out?
So usually by the time they come to me, they kind of have some awareness that hey, I'm having this really strong emotional reaction to something that other people are not. And that's
Mm-hmm.
usually when they come in to see me. And I usually have this discussion with parents too, because I think it helps parents to realize, hey, this isn't my kid being oppositional. This isn't my kid just being, mean. Or if they get kind of defensive or refuse to do something, it's not that they're disrespecting me.
Right.
They're having a really strong emotional reaction and they don't know what to do with it. Their body is telling them, hey, this is life threatening, when it's not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and I assume in a lot of the work that you do, because we work with pediatrics, you do a lot of education with the parents as
Mhm.
well. So I guess I'm going to ask this other question too. So what are some few brief interventions that parents can do at home? Because, when oftentimes when, before they see you, I'm sure that these families are just dealing with these outbursts,
Mhm.
oppositional episodes, crying, refusal to go to school, whatever it looks like.
Hmm.
And then these parents are just wanting something to be able to manage those episodes should they arise again.
Hmm. So I think one of the first things that I talk with families about is to validate how the kid is feeling or the person is feeling. We want to be seen, we want to be heard, and recognize that this isn't this experience. I'm not alone in this. And oftentimes what happens, and I'm guilty of this as a mom myself, my kid will say, oh, I don't want to do that. And I will say, but that's what we're doing now,
Mhm.
or whatever. And then what happens is they go, well, I don't want to. And then I'm frustrated because I have my own expectation about how this is going to go.
Mhm.
And I'll give you an example. I use this example with my people a lot. I have two younger kids, 8 and 6, and they, when I was working from home, they were coming home from school, and I was so excited to be able to get them off the bus. And in my mind, it's this Norman Rockwell painting. They come in, everyone's happy, we're hugging, it's beautiful, Sound of Music kind of thing. And what happens is they come in, they throw their stuff down, and they're super upset. And I'm like, whoa, that is not how I saw this going. And I reacted. I got angry. My monkey took over and was like, hey, this is not okay. Then they get more upset, then I get more upset. It doesn't end up working out. So I thought about that situation afterwards, and I thought, well, maybe what happened is that I expected something that didn't follow through. And so maybe I need to think about managing my expectations. So the next day I said, okay, I hope that's what happens, but if not, I'll be ready. I can handle it. And they came in and they were a little upset. And I said, hey, what's going on? Did you guys have a rough day? I met them where they were, validated what was happening. And both of them said, yes, our bus driver was really mean to us and she won't let us do this and that. And they tell me what was bothering them and it's over.
Hmm.
So I had, as a parent, to manage my expectation. And I think where we tend to get in trouble is usually, you mentioned triggers earlier. It typically is during a busy time. So I'm getting dinner ready, or we have to get ready for school, or we have to do these things and we're kind of on a timeline. When those things happen, we get really stressed and expect things to go a certain way. And when they don't, that's when we tend to clash and get that oppositionality.
Mhm.
And as a parent, sometimes we see it as our kids just not listening instead of, I'm so anxious, I don't know what to do right now, or I'm
Mhm.
overwhelmed. I need that adult to say, oh, let's pause for a minute. What's going on? Let's talk about it.
Mhm. Yeah, and that is so true. I mean, I think especially with that those time pressured situations because life is busy and we
Mm-hmm.
have lots of things on our to-do list to check off and get done. And those expectations are really really sometimes hard to manage.
Mm-hmm.
What if you see a family that continually has kind of struggles with this? Are there anything else that, you can work with a parent on? Because
Mm-hmm.
I assume just hearing that, parents are like, oh, well, that sounds easy enough, but she's not been in my house.
So we talk about all of those different scenarios and we do role plays. We'll walk through it. So let's talk
Mhm.
about a situation where this comes up for your family and how can we do it differently?
Yep.
And how can we manage those expectations together ahead of time? So we sit down with our kid and say, later today, we're going to have this situation. Let's talk about how we can do that a little smoother. What
Mhm.
do we both expect? And not only do parents have expectations, so do kids. So they have their own set of expectations. And so we talk to them about how to manage those expectations as well, and how to use their ability to say, hey, this bothers me ahead of time before we get emotionally reacted, because once we're there, it's really hard to calm down.
Yeah.
There are some things you can do in those moments, though. So once a kid kind of, or as anyone kind of gets distressed, you can, in essence, your monkey brain kind of hijacks the Einstein brain in those moments, takes over, and we go just to that emotional reaction. Well, there's been some evidence that says we can kind of trick it back the other way. So, doing some logic puzzles, doing something very, very quick and easy, like tell me 5 things that start with the letter R, tell me 5 things that are red. And it seems to sort of like monkey kind of gets disoriented, and we kick back over to Einstein, like, oh, okay, this is not that big of a deal. I can handle it.
Mhm. That's wonderful, and I think you just kind of triggered a sort of a thought because um, a lot of kids that when they're in that heightened state, having something to help
Hmm.
get them out of that monkey brain, as you
Yep.
said. I think that's what parents really, really,
Oh,
really
yes.
need.
Yes. We need, well, because you got to go at it from both sides. So,
Yes.
it's easier said than done, but what happens when I'm in the moment? What happens
Yes.
when my kid is, has thrown themselves on the floor or
Yes.
is, just like, what is going
You
on?
mean that they can't just take you home?
Right. Right. I mean, probably not. But, and the other thing I will tell parents is that sometimes your kid may not be in that headspace yet to even engage. So I will do it. So if this happens with my kids, I will say, okay, let's think of 5 things that are red. And one of my kids likes the rainbow. So we'll go through the rainbow and pick out, 5 things that are each of those colors. We may get to yellow
Mhm.
before she starts engaging. So I may do red and orange and then okay, but it's enough that like okay, now my monkey brain is settling, I'm starting to calm down
Mhm.
and I can actually hear what's happening now.
Yeah, no, I love that. So you're talking about parents modeling this.
Hmm.
They need to be in the right headspace themselves, and a
Hmm.
lot of it is managing expectations, but then remembering, like, I've got to meet them where they are, and
Yep.
I've got to be the one to sort of make the first change.
Yes. And to recognize that if they react that way, it's not personal. They're not doing it to you. You're not a
Oh,
bad
oh.
parent. This is,
Yeah,
we get defensive. That's just human nature. And
yeah,
so if I can kind of take a step back and kind of observe from here, then I'm still in control. Because what happens is if you trigger me and I trigger you and then boop, 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 and we're just, our
yeah.
monkeys are fighting and throwing bananas at each other instead of actually being able to like, oh, what's really going on here?
Yeah. I can imagine though, Michelle, when you talk to families about this, that sometimes it brings on huge parental guilt,
Hmm.
kind of reflecting on past interactions. Gosh,
For
wait,
sure.
I could have done something different. Like, how do I manage that? What message do you have for families, when they're like, oh, I could have done it better, and they're like beating themselves up. I mean, is there anything?
Yes. So there's this is kind of more for adults, but I'm now
Yeah.
starting to figure out how to bring that back down to kids. It's kind of a 3-step process that I need to come up with a good name for. But that first part is to acknowledge how you're feeling
Hmm.
and then to validate it or make sense of it. And that's usually where we fall apart. Instead of validating our feelings, we start looking for the reasons why we're, a bad person or a terrible parent. So, for example, oh man, I didn't handle that very well. I'm feeling really guilty about that.
Hmm.
The validation or make sense of it. Why does it make sense I'd feel that way? Well, because I care, because I want to be a better parent. I don't want to do this to my child or I don't want to have this reaction. And then that third part is kind of the reframe of, oh, well, then now I can make some decisions. So I'm glad I was able to recognize that. And I'm glad that I actually am able to have a feeling of sort of guilt. So rather than letting guilt say, oh, I did something wrong, more like, no, guilt helps me know that I'd like to change and that I'm still capable of that. I'm aware of kind of how this might impact somebody else, as opposed to like, oh, this is evidence that I'm not a good parent.
Right, right. Yeah, no, this was very helpful, and I do hope you come up with your three-step process because this
I have it. I
the
just need a
name.
lovely name for
Yeah,
it. I need
yeah.
a catchy name.
Yes, yes, as always. Yeah, no, this is wonderful. I mean, I'm hoping that families, as they're listening or watching this, will really be like, okay, this makes sense. But again, trying to get in that headspace. What you're talking a lot about is just kind of being able to reflect and know. And I always tell parents, like, kids will give us lots of chances to try again. So
Hmm.
be rest assured, like, it's okay,
Absolutely.
right? But I think that big awareness, that ability to step back and think about, I didn't do that quite the way I wanted. And it's okay to actually go and tell your kids that too.
I would say it's not just okay, it is so important
Yeah.
because a lot of times their expectations are, well, man, parents don't do anything wrong, so therefore it must be me. I'm not a good kid because I instead being able to go back and say, you know what, I didn't handle that very well and I'm sorry. Here's what I wanted to say to you, but I didn't handle that very well.
Hmm.
They respond beautifully to that. And then it helps them to recognize, hey, we make mistakes. And the important part is that we fix it and we come and make the person know, hey, sorry.
Yeah, no, this is all really wonderful. And for those of you who are watching, please put something like yes, or something on here so that we know like what is sticking, calling out to you. And again, like I said, because this was pre-recorded, I will be monitoring those comments and I'll pass it on to Dr. Thorne. This is all really important stuff. So thank you for sharing that. So let's talk about like what's next, So if people are watching this and they're like, oh my gosh, I need to work with her, I know. Please let us know how people can get a hold of you or any of that information.
So I have my practice of kind of two different locations, but Infinity Wellness is where I'm at right now, and that's the link that you can click there and request an appointment. I've got a couple other people working with me who are also amazing, so that would be a really good place. I also have my email address that Dr. Bauer will share with you too.
Okay.
So that's a real good way to get in touch with me as well, and I can help guide you to if it's working with me, fantastic. If it's working with somebody else that's a better fit, that also works. I will connect you with who you need to be with, because that's 90% of it, is finding somebody that you feel comfortable talking to.
Hmm. Can we just say that again? Because I think sometimes when families try to work with a therapist and then they're like, oh, it didn't work. So
Mm-hmm.
then they give up on therapy. Can you
Mm-hmm.
just like, do you have any tips for finding the right?
Yes. Well, and I think that's one of the things that Infinity Wellness is planning on doing. We're going to have a division that will connect people to what services they need. That's the thing I hear the most is, where do I go? Okay, I'm having this issue. Where do I go? Oh, well, that person sounds great, but I can't get into them. Or so one of our divisions will be a place where parents can call and say, hey, this is what I need. I need, whether that's a therapist or speech therapy or what have you. Here are the people who are doing what you need. Here's how to get connected. And then on that other side, to your other point, when people come into me, one of the first things I say to them is, we talk about everything you say here stays here. We don't go
Mhm.
telling anybody anything. So that confidentiality piece. But the second piece, which I think is just as important, is that you feel comfortable being here. And if you don't feel comfortable talking to me, this is kind of word for word what I say, you will not hurt my feelings. It is not a big deal. It is so important that you have someone you click with.
Yeah.
We're talking about some really serious, hard stuff.
Yeah.
People aren't going to want to just tell anybody.
Yeah. And that's true for the kids, right? Not just
Absolutely.
the parents as
Yep.
well. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. I love that. I mean, I think so, making sure that there's a goodness of fit there between because you've got to trust that person to be
Absolutely.
able to talk and share that information. And how many sessions would you say normally does that happen? Because, some parents are like, well, she's shy. Of course, she's not going to open up anyway the first couple sessions.
So usually it's, you can kind of tell, or the child can kind of tell within even, okay, I don't know this person yet, but I do think that I could get there. So I do think I could talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
So I encourage them, give it a couple of tries, give it a few sessions, because you're right. That first time I may be so anxious and my monkey brain may be like, warning, warning, get out of here,
Yes.
and not be able to hear much of what's being said. So it's usually, I would say, probably 3 to 4 sessions if you are like, okay, I think I can probably work with this person.
Mhm, mhm. And then let me just clarify too, just so that it's clear as well. For your practice, Michelle, are you seeing locally or are you open to folks even out of state?
So for, depending on where they are out of state, absolutely, we will just, some of the things that we have to deal with are the licensure pieces
Yes.
in different states. But certainly we do virtual appointments, and we also have a local space as well. So we've got both options for people.
Okay, wonderful. So I am so excited for you that you're doing this.
Thank
I
you.
wish you so much good luck with this endeavor because it is so needed. It's
I
so
think
needed.
so.
I mean, you even said yourself you're doing this because you identified this need.
Yes.
So,
I think there, and as you said in the very beginning, the pandemic has opened our eyes to how much stress and anxiety is truly there, both for kids and for adults. This is a really unprecedented time. How many times have we heard that?
yeah.
It's scary. We need some support.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much. I think this episode is going to really be helpful for a lot of families. I really appreciate you for sharing your time, your expertise. And I hope those of you who are watching, leave us a comment, share the episode with anybody else you think could benefit because, gosh, this is gold.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you so much for having me. This was wonderful. And I love that you're doing this. This is such an
Oh,
awesome, awesome platform. I love that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So for those of you who are watching and know that I typically have a guest at 7:30 on Thursdays, a couple changes. So next week I will be using this platform to talk about my course Teach Me ADHD because we will be starting advanced registration December 20th. So for families who are on the wait list, and if you're not, you can still have some time to get on there. You'll have the advanced registration period before it opens up to the general public. You'll want to make sure that you secure your class time because there's a limited number of spots. So I'll be using next Thursday to talk about the Teach Me ADHD course, answer any questions that you may have. And then also, starting in the new year, I'm going to be changing the date and time of this show. It's going to be moving to Mondays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, partly because of family things as well. But hopefully that'll be back on your weekly things to do. So that way you can still continue to follow and listen from all my great guests that I have on. And then lastly, I do want to say that our November book club pick, I know that we had talked about this book, but because Dr. Hollowell was so gracious. He was going to chat with us December 13th, and I know that it's going to be archived. So if you missed it, please make sure to join the parenting discussion group on Facebook, and you'll see the recorded book club chat with Dr. Hollowell there. That's always there. All my book club chats are always archived, so it's not too late to pick up that book. It's a great book. And then I'll be announcing my January book club pick, which I'm really, really excited about. So stay tuned. And if you have any other topics or guests that you want to talk about on this show, drop me a line or drop me an email, and I'll put that up there right now. At Dr. Narissa at letstalkkidshealth.org. And then make sure to please follow me on YouTube and on my social media accounts. I always love to hear from you. Again, thank you so much, Michelle. It was so nice to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me, and I will hope to see you soon.
Yes, and we'll talk to you guys next week.